Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just made the biggest miscalculation of her political life. She called the Director of National Intelligence, a decorated combat veteran with access to America's deepest secrets, a mega puppet on live television. Big mistake. Tulsi Gabbard's response was ice-cold and devastating. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, since you want to question my integrity on national television, let's discuss your $35,000 in unpaid bills from the Met Gala. You wore a tax the rich dress while stealing services from working-class vendors. She paused, letting that sink in. And that's just the beginning. As DNI, I have classified intelligence reports on all your financial activities. Should we discuss your taxpayer-funded dance lessons? Or how about those payments to entities that don't exist in any federal database? The studio fell completely silent. What happened in the next 45 minutes will go down as the most devastating political takedown in television history. Smash that like button, because you're about to witness a socialist politician get systematically destroyed by someone who actually served her country. This decorated Iraq War veteran, the woman who controls America's entire intelligence apparatus, just declassified evidence that will end Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's career forever. Tulsi Gabbard is done playing nice with politicians who lecture Americans about inequality while living like celebrities, accepting thousands in free gifts, misusing taxpayer money, and then trying to cover it up when they get caught. You see, AOC thought she could attack someone with zero consequences. She thought her social media following would protect her. She thought her progressive allies in the media would run cover. She was catastrophically wrong. When you attack the Director of National Intelligence, someone with legal authority to access every financial transaction, every ethics violation, every attempt to mislead the public, you better have a squeaky clean record, AOC's record. Let's just say it's the opposite of clean. This is bigger than just one politician's scandals. This is the day America finally saw the difference between authentic military service and political theater, between someone who genuinely sacrificed for their country and someone who plays dress-up at celebrity galas while ordinary vendors wait months for payment. This is the day a warrior faced a fraud, and the warrior won. Let's go. It was a beautiful Sunday morning in Washington, D.C. But what happened on CNN in the next hour would fundamentally alter American politics. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had orchestrated what she thought would be a career-defining moment. She'd accepted CNN's invitation to appear alongside Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, for a discussion about intelligence oversight and border enforcement. But this wasn't really about policy discussion. AOC had a different agenda. For months, she'd been building social media momentum against the Trump administration's border policies. She needed a viral moment, something dramatic, something that would galvanize her progressive base and dominate the news cycle. Her strategy: attack Tulsi Gabbard's credibility in front of millions of viewers. Paint the DNI as a Trump puppet, compromising national security. Let the media amplify the message for days. She'd calculated that Tulsi, bound by intelligence protocols and professional restraint, couldn't fight back effectively on live TV. AOC would get her viral moment. Tulsi would have to sit there and take it, and the progressive movement would have a new rallying cry. It was the kind of political theater AOC had perfected over 6 years in Congress. Staged confrontations, emotional speeches, perfectly timed social media posts. Performance over substance. Every single time. What AOC didn't calculate was that Tulsi Gabbard wasn't a typical politician. She was a warrior. And warriors don't lose confrontations, they finish them. Alexandria sat in the green room scrolling through Twitter, while her communications team prepped talking points. She was riding high. 5.8 million Twitter followers, 8.7 million on Instagram. Every late-night show wanted her. Every progressive rally needed her name. She was the voice of the young left. She'd built an entire political brand on taking down establishment figures. Why would a Trump appointee be any different? "We're going to destroy her," AOC told her chief of staff, adjusting her designer blazer in the mirror. By tomorrow, #RemoveGabbard will be trending worldwide. She'd worn a specific outfit for the appearance designer blazer statement: jewelry, perfect makeup. Every detail calculated for maximum social media impact. This wasn't about policy. This was about performance. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was very good at performance. In the opposing green room, Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard sat quietly reviewing briefing documents. 21 years of military service. 2 deployments to combat zones. Combat Medical Badge from Iraq. Commander of an Army Reserve Battalion. And now Director of National Intelligence Oversight of all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies. She wasn't scrolling social media or coordinating viral moments. She was reviewing classified intelligence files she'd specifically requested earlier that week. Files about financial disclosures, ethics investigations, patterns of behavior. Her aide knocked. "DNI Gabbard, they're ready for you in 5 minutes." Tulsi closed the folder marked Ocasio-Cortez Alexandria, Ethics Overview, Classified. She stood, straightened her jacket, and walked toward the studio with the same calm she'd carried into actual combat zones. Because Tulsi Gabbard had learned something in Iraq that AOC would never understand, real warriors don't perform battles for cameras. They win them. Jake Tapper opened the segment with careful neutrality. Joining me today are 2 prominent women in American politics with very different perspectives on intelligence and border security. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York's 14th District. The first 20 minutes were procedural. Questions about border policy, intelligence priorities, budget allocations. She delivered her usual talking points about humanitarian crisis and militarized borders. Tulsi responded with measured factual assessments about national security threats and intelligence capabilities. But everyone watching could feel the tension building. AOC kept glancing at the camera, hitting her soundbite marks, playing to her social media audience. Tulsi remained focused, professional, military precise in her responses. Then Jake asked about criticism of DNI Gabbard from progressive lawmakers. That was AOC's opening. She'd been waiting for it. "Jake, I'm glad you brought that up." AOC began, turning to face the camera instead of Tulsi. "Because I think the American people deserve to know the truth about who's really leading our intelligence agencies." She paused for dramatic effect, a move she'd perfected over thousands of Instagram videos. Director Gabbard isn't serving the American people. She's serving Donald Trump's political agenda. She's a mega puppet who's compromised the integrity of our intelligence community. Jake Tapper's eyes widened. That was a direct personal attack way beyond normal political criticism. But AOC wasn't finished. Her appointment was a betrayal of intelligence professionals. She's pushed Russian propaganda. She's defended dictators. She's undermined our alliances. And frankly, having someone with her record in charge of our nation's secrets, that's not just wrong, it's dangerous. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Dangerous. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had just called the Director of National Intelligence on live television a compromised threat to national security. She'd crossed a line that no politician crosses. She'd personally attacked someone who had the authority, the access, and the intelligence to completely destroy her. And she'd done it with that trademark AOC smile, the one that said she thought she was untouchable. Tulsi Gabbard sat perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds, not reacting, not blinking, just calculating. Her expression was the same one she'd worn in Iraq when taking incoming fire ice-cold assessment, zero emotion, complete tactical focus. Every veteran watching immediately recognized that look. It was the look of someone who'd just been fatally underestimated by an opponent who had no idea what they'd unleashed. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, controlled, deadly. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. Tulsi repeated, her tone professionally calm, but with steel underneath. Since you want to question my integrity on national television, let's discuss your ethics violations. She reached into her briefcase with deliberate precision. As Director of National Intelligence, I have access to not just classified intelligence, but also all ethics investigations, financial disclosures, and federal law enforcement databases. Tulsi withdrew a folder stamped with official DNI classification markings. Let's start with your 2021 Met Gala appearance. You attended a $35,000 per ticket celebrity event wearing a custom gown with "Tax the Rich" written on it. Very dramatic. Very Instagram-worthy. She paused, letting the image sink in for viewers. What you didn't tell your working-class followers was that you accepted over $35,000 in gifts, designer clothes, shoes, jewelry, professional hair and makeup, luxury hotel rooms, transportation, all of which violate federal ethics rules. AOC's practiced smile faltered just slightly. The House Ethics Committee just finished a 4-year investigation into your conduct. Want to know what they found? Tulsi opened the folder revealing official House Ethics Committee documents. These are the findings from the Ethics Committee report, released July 25, 2025. Let me read directly from their conclusions. She looked straight at the camera, then at AOC. Representative Ocasio-Cortez impermissibly accepted gifts in violation of House rules. She failed to pay full fair market value for goods and services received in connection with her 2021 Met Gala attendance. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Congresswoman. You know who pays $35,000 to attend the Met Gala celebrities. Billionaires. The ultra-rich. You know who doesn't pay politicians who lecture others about wealth inequality while accepting free designer clothes. Jake Tapper tried to interject, but Tulsi continued with military precision. According to the investigation you received, a custom-made designer gown valued at over $6,000, you paid less than half. Designer shoes you promised to return but kept for months. Professional hairstyling, $477 unpaid until the stylist threatened legal action. Professional makeup services, $340 unpaid for months. Luxury accommodations at the Carlisle Hotel, thousands of dollars unpaid. Transportation and logistics unpaid. A free ticket for your partner valued at $35,000. Explicitly not covered under House rules. Each point landed like a precision strike. But here's what really matters. Congresswoman, you only started paying these bills after the ethics investigation began. Some vendors waited over 6 months for payment. Working-class vendors, hairstylists, makeup artists, small business owners, while you posted selfies from the event and built your brand as a champion of working people. Tulsi produced a second document. This is particularly relevant. According to the Ethics Committee findings, you deliberately requested that vendors keep costs down while knowing you were receiving services that celebrities pay tens of thousands for. She let that sink in. So you wore a dress saying, "Tax the rich," to an event where you personally received more in free gifts than the average American family makes in a year. And you tried to get those services below market rate from working vendors. The Ethics Committee determined you violated federal ethics laws and House rules. They ordered you to pay an additional $2,983 to make up the difference, money you still owe as of last month. AOC shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her social media confidence visibly cracking. Congresswoman, you built your entire political brand on attacking wealth inequality. But when it comes to your behavior, you accept lavish gifts from corporations, you underpay working-class vendors, and you only comply with ethics rules when forced to by investigations. That's not championing working people. That's exploiting them for Instagram content, while living like the elites you claim to oppose. Alexandria tried to recover her voice, rising with practiced indignation. That's completely misleading. The Ethics Committee found no intentional wrongdoing. I was invited to the Met Gala as an elected official from New York, representing my district's fashion industry workers. It was her standard deflection technique, volume, emotion, reframe the narrative. This is exactly the kind of sexist double standard that women in politics face. Male politicians attend events all the time without. Tulsi's calm interruption cut through like a knife. Congresswoman, the Ethics Committee specifically found that you impermissibly accepted gifts and violated House rules. That's not a double standard. That's a fact from a bipartisan investigation. And invoking sexism. Really, I'm a woman who served in combat zones where the Taliban actively targeted female soldiers. Don't lecture me about sexism when we're discussing documented ethics violations. AOC's face flushed. She wasn't used to being challenged this directly, this publicly, with this level of factual precision. Her Twitter followers couldn't save her here. Her Instagram posts couldn't reframe this. She was trapped in a live television confrontation with someone who had actual evidence, actual authority, and actual combat experience. This wasn't political theater. This was an interrogation. And it was just beginning. Jake Tapper attempted to moderate. "Director Gabbard, I think we should—" "No, Jake, we're not done," Tulsi said firmly. "The Congresswoman called me dangerous and a MAGA puppet on your show. She questioned my integrity, so the American people deserve to know the full picture of her ethics record." Tulsi withdrew another folder from her briefcase. This one was thicker. "The Met Gala violations. That was just your most public scandal, Congresswoman. But as DNI, I've reviewed all your ethics complaints. Every investigation, every questionable payment, every pattern of behavior." She held up the folder. "Shall we discuss your misuse of taxpayer-funded office accounts? Or do you want to keep pretending you're a victim?" AOC's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. The warrior was just warming up. Tulsi didn't wait for AOC's response. She opened the second folder with the same methodical precision she'd use in a military briefing. "Let's talk about how you spend taxpayer money, Congresswoman." She produced official House disbursement records. In December 2024, you used your member representational allowance, that's taxpayer-funded money, intended for official congressional business, to pay $3,700 to someone named Juan D. Gonzalez for dance training. The word training dripped with skepticism. You also paid $50 to Bombazo Dance Co. Inc. for similar dance-related expenses. Both payments were listed as official office expenditures. Jake Tapper leaned forward, clearly intrigued, despite himself. Tulsi continued, "Now, here's the problem. Investigative reporters couldn't find Juan D. Gonzalez or Bombasso Dance Co. Inc. in any Federal Election Commission records. They don't appear in congressional campaign disbursements. They don't exist in standard federal databases." She looked directly at AOC. Americans for Public Trust filed an ethics complaint about these payments. They alleged you misappropriated taxpayer funds for personal or campaign use disguised as office expenses. You claimed on social media, and I'm quoting your tweet here, 100% wrong. None of this is taxpayer money. This is an FEC filing. Tulsi paused for effect. Congresswoman, if these weren't taxpayer funds, they would have been reported to the FEC as campaign expenses. But they weren't. They were listed in official House disbursements between October and December 2024. That's literally the definition of taxpayer money. So either you misused taxpayer funds for personal expenses, or you used office accounts to pay campaign expenses. Both are violations of federal law. Which is it? Before AOC could formulate a response, Tulsi pressed forward. This isn't an isolated incident, is it? This is a pattern. She pulled out timeline documents. Met Gala, September 2021. Accept gifts, pay late, only comply when investigated. Taxpayer office funds, December 2024. Make questionable payments to entities that can't be verified. Every single time you claim it's a misunderstanding or accounting error or sexist attack. But the Ethics Committee doesn't think so. Federal watchdog groups don't think so. And the American people are starting to notice. Tulsi's voice remained calm, but gained intensity. You've positioned yourself as the voice of working Americans, the champion of the poor, the enemy of corruption. But your conduct shows something very different. You accept luxury gifts while lecturing others about inequality. You underpay working-class vendors while preaching worker rights. You potentially misuse taxpayer money while demanding more government spending. You only follow ethics rules when investigations force you to. That's not leadership, Congresswoman. That's hypocrisy. And it's all documented in official investigations that you can't spin away with a Twitter thread. AOC's media training was failing her. She kept trying to interrupt, to reframe, to deflect. But Tulsi's evidence was too specific, too documented, too overwhelming. The studio audience was completely silent, watching a masterclass in how to systematically dismantle a politician's credibility using nothing but facts. This is a coordinated attack. AOC finally burst out, her composure cracking. You're using your position to weaponize intelligence agencies against a congresswoman who disagrees with Trump. It was a desperate play. Try to make this about Trump, about partisanship, about anything except the actual evidence. But Tulsi was ready. Congresswoman, nothing I've presented is classified intelligence. These are public documents. Ethics Committee reports, House disbursement records, federal complaints filed by watchdog organizations. Her tone was almost pitying. You don't need security clearance to access this information. Any American can read these reports online. The only reason this feels like an attack is because you're finally being held accountable on national television. She leaned forward slightly. I haven't even touched the classified intelligence yet. That last sentence landed like a bomb. AOC's eyes widened. What do you mean, classified? Oh, did you think the Met Gala and dance lessons were all I had? Tulsi's smile was razor-sharp. Congresswoman, I'm the Director of National Intelligence. I have access to financial intelligence databases that track international money movements. I have oversight of federal law enforcement investigations. I have security clearance to review any information relevant to national security, including financial patterns of elected officials." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Want to discuss what else I found when I ran your name through those systems?" The color drained from AOC's face. Jake Tapper tried desperately to go to commercial break, but Tulsi wasn't done. "Let's talk about your political financing, Congresswoman. Specifically, why you lost the endorsement of your own socialist organization." July 2024, Tulsi stated flatly, "The Democratic Socialists of America, your own political organization, the group that launched your career, withdrew their endorsement of you." She produced another document. This was unprecedented. DSA had endorsed you in every election since 2018. But in 2024, they issued their first-ever conditional endorsement with specific demands about your Israel-Palestine positions. When you participated in a panel about anti-Semitism and voted for a House resolution on Israel, they pulled your endorsement entirely. Tulsi looked up from the documents. "Now I'm not here to debate Middle East policy. What I'm highlighting is the pattern. Even your own ideological allies don't trust you anymore." DSA's national leadership said, and I'm quoting, "To build a socialist movement that's capable of defeating capitalism, we must demand more from leaders in our movement." Your own political movement determined you weren't committed enough to their cause. You were too focused on personal brand building, too willing to compromise for mainstream media acceptance. In other words, Congresswoman, even the Democratic Socialists think you're a sellout. The attack came from an unexpected angle, and AOC visibly struggled to respond. That's internal party politics that has nothing to do with— "It has everything to do with your character," Tulsi interrupted. "You campaign as a revolutionary. You position yourself as an uncompromising progressive. But when it counts, you compromise constantly whenever it benefits your career. You're not a conviction politician. You're a performance artist." Tulsi pulled out a series of photos. "Let's talk about your greatest hits of political theater, shall we?" She held up the first image, AOC crying at a border fence in 2018. This photo went viral. You crying at the border, supposedly devastated by Trump's immigration policies. Powerful image, right? Except investigative journalists later confirmed you weren't even looking at the detention facility. You were near a parking lot. The photos were staged for maximum emotional impact. The photojournalist who took these images, Yvonne Pierre Aguirre, later said, quote, "I didn't talk to her that day or before the photos. I just saw a moment and started to make photos, as I am wired to do." You created a viral moment based on political theater, not actual policy engagement. She produced another image. 2019, one of your town halls. A woman stands up and starts screaming about eating babies to address climate change. "Remember this," AOC nodded reluctantly. Turns out that woman was a plant from a political group. They literally staged that disruption. But you and your team used the viral clip to fundraise for weeks, portraying yourselves as victims of extremism. Political theater. Tulsi spread out several more images, Instagram posts from luxury locations, designer outfits, celebrity events, magazine covers. Your social media presence isn't about legislation or constituent services. It's about brand management. Every post calculated for maximum engagement. Every photo designed to go viral. You've mastered the art of looking like you're fighting for working people while actually building a celebrity political brand that benefits you. 5.8 million Twitter followers, 8.7 million on Instagram, magazine covers, late-night show appearances. But what have you actually accomplished for your district? She paused, looking directly at AOC. Name one major piece of legislation you've passed that's become law. The silence was deafening. AOC opened her mouth closed. It opened it again. Nothing came out. That's what I thought, Tulsi said quietly. Tulsi's tone shifted, less prosecutorial, more disappointed. Congresswoman, I actually thought you might be different when you first got elected. A young woman from the Bronx challenging establishment politics. There was something potentially authentic about your early campaign. But what did you become? Another politician who says one thing and does another? You campaign on tax the rich while accepting gifts from corporations and wealthy donors. You claim to champion workers while underpaying vendors and staff. You attack establishment corruption while violating the exact ethics rules designed to prevent it. You build a following by calling out hypocrisy while being a hypocrite. The moral weight of the accusation hung heavy. I've served with men and women who sacrificed everything for this country. Soldiers who died protecting the values you claim to represent. Intelligence officers working in dangerous conditions to keep Americans safe. And then I watch you, someone who's never served in uniform, never risked your life for anyone, never sacrificed comfort for duty, lecture the rest of us about integrity. Tulsi's voice was quiet, but carried complete authority. You want to call me dangerous. I've served in combat zones. I've earned a combat medical badge treating wounded soldiers under fire. I've spent 21 years in uniform protecting this country. What have you done besides build an Instagram following? The comparison was devastating. Military service versus social media. Authentic sacrifice versus performed activism. Real leadership versus political theater. My combat medical badge can't be bought at a Met Gala, Congresswoman, but your credibility seems to be for sale to anyone offering a luxury gift or celebrity event invitation. AOC looked like she might cry, not the staged political tears from the border photos, but genuine distress at being completely outmatched. Tulsi wasn't finished. She'd been building systematically ethics violations, taxpayer misuse, political opportunism. Now came the personal destruction. Let's talk about your lifestyle, Congresswoman. She produced financial analysis documents. You claim to be a champion of the working class. You positioned yourself as someone who understands economic struggle, the bartender who became a congresswoman. But let's look at your actual life since taking office in 2019. Tulsi listed items methodically. Designer wardrobe worth tens of thousands. Frequent attendance at celebrity events and luxury galas. High-end restaurants and exclusive venues. Professional styling, makeup, photography for social media, expensive apartment in Washington, D.C., luxury accommodations when traveling. Now, your congressional salary is $174,000 per year. Comfortable, but not wealthy. Yet, somehow, you maintain a lifestyle that matches celebrities and wealthy elites. She looked up sharply. How do you afford this lifestyle, Congresswoman? Where does the money come from? You claim your net worth is modest, somewhere around $500,000, according to your financial disclosures. But you live like someone worth millions. Are you accepting gifts we don't know about? Are donors paying for your lifestyle? Are corporations providing services that don't appear in official filings? Because the math doesn't add up. And when a politician's lifestyle doesn't match their disclosed income, that's usually a red flag for corruption. AOC tried to object, but Tulsi rolled over her. You lecture others about income inequality while wearing designer clothes to celebrity events. You demand higher taxes on the wealthy while accepting their gifts and attending their parties. You criticize capitalism while building a personal brand that makes you rich and famous. You're not fighting the system, Congresswoman. You're exploiting it for personal gain while pretending to be a revolutionary. The attack was personal specific and impossible to defend against without revealing more information AOC clearly didn't want public. Let's talk about your district, Tulsi continued. NY14, parts of the Bronx and Queens, working-class neighborhoods, immigrant communities, people struggling with real economic challenges. What have you done for them? She pulled out constituent service records. Your office's constituent service response rate is among the lowest in Congress. You're terrible at casework, helping actual people solve problems with federal agencies. Why? Because casework doesn't go viral on Instagram. It's unglamorous work that doesn't build your celebrity brand. Your district has some of the highest poverty rates in New York, but you're more focused on national progressive causes than local issues. Now, you've become a symbol for left-wing politics nationally, but your actual constituents, the people who elected you, get ignored while you chase viral moments and cable news appearances. Tulsi leaned forward, her military bearing making her presence commanding. I represent no district anymore. I serve the entire country as DNI. But when I was in Congress, I served my constituents. Town halls, casework, actual legislation that helped people. You don't serve your constituents, Congresswoman. You use them as props in your political performance. And the sad thing, they believe you actually care. They think you're fighting for them, while you're really fighting for your next magazine cover. The moral condemnation in Tulsi's voice was withering. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had completely lost her composure. Gone was the confident social media star. Gone was the practiced political performer. What remained was a young politician realizing she'd been utterly destroyed on national television. "This is you're twisting everything," she stammered, her voice cracking. "You're taking things out of context. You're using your position to bully me. This is bullying." Tulsi's voice was ice. "Congresswoman, you attacked me first. You called me dangerous and a mega puppet on national television. I'm simply responding with facts, with evidence, with documentation. If that feels like bullying, maybe it's because you're not used to being held accountable." AOC's hands were shaking. Tears were forming in her eyes, and everyone watching knew these weren't political tears. This was genuine distress. I was invited to events as a member of Congress. I was trying to represent. You were trying to build a celebrity brand." Tulsi cut her off. "And you did it by violating ethics rules, misusing taxpayer money, and lecturing others about values you don't actually live by. You're a fraud Congresswoman, a well-marketed Instagram famous fraud, but still a fraud." Jake Tapper was frantically signaling producers. This had gone from political debate to complete annihilation. They needed to go to commercial, but the compelling nature of the destruction made it impossible to cut away. America was watching a warrior systematically dismantle a politician who'd mistakenly believed her social media following made her untouchable. It didn't. Tulsi's demeanor shifted. The prosecutorial edge softened, replaced by something deeper, the testimony of someone who'd actually served. "Congresswoman, let me tell you about the difference between service and performance." Her voice was quieter now, but somehow more powerful. "In 2004, I deployed to Iraq with the Hawaii Army National Guard. I was 23 years old. I served in a medical unit treating combat casualties. I've held soldiers as they died. I've provided medical care under fire. I've earned a combat medical badge. You know what that means. It means I treated wounded personnel while being engaged by the enemy. When I came home, I didn't post Instagram photos of myself crying at military bases. I didn't use my service as a prop for political theater. I just continued serving as an officer, as a commander, as someone committed to protecting this country. She looked directly at AOC with something that almost looked like pity. You've never served in uniform. You've never put your life at risk for anyone. You've never sacrificed personal comfort for duty. And that's fine. Not everyone serves in the military. But don't lecture those of us who have about integrity and danger when you've never faced either. I've seen real corruption in Iraq and Afghanistan, in war zones where politicians and contractors steal money meant for soldiers. Money that should go to armor, to medical supplies, to equipment that saves lives. And then I come home and watch you accepting gifts, misusing taxpayer money, violating ethics rules, all while preaching about inequality and justice. You know what that makes you? Exactly the kind of corrupt politician I joined the military to stand against. The comparison was devastating because it was so personal, so authentic. This wasn't political point scoring. This was a combat veteran explaining why AOC's behavior was morally offensive on a fundamental level. Tulsi reached into her briefcase one more time. This folder was different, marked with higher classification stamps. Congresswoman, I told you earlier that I haven't touched the classified intelligence yet. AOC's face went white. As DNI, I have access to financial intelligence reports that track money flows, foreign influence operations, and potential security risks among elected officials. She held up the classified folder but didn't open it. I've reviewed intelligence assessments about your foreign travel, your communications with foreign nationals, your financial patterns. Now, I'm not going to declassify that information today. Unlike some politicians, I take my security responsibilities seriously. But I can tell you this: if the American people saw what's in this file, they would demand a full investigation into your activities. It was a devastating threat delivered with perfect calm. You call me dangerous, Congresswoman. You should be very, very careful about throwing that accusation around when there are legitimate questions about your activities that haven't been publicly examined yet. The implication was clear without being specific. There was much more that Tulsi could reveal if pushed. AOC looked like she might be sick. Are you threatening me?" she whispered. "I'm informing you that your attack on my integrity was based on zero evidence, while my assessment of your ethical failures is based on extensive documentation. That's not a threat. That's a fact." Tulsi stood up, not aggressively, but with the bearing of someone who'd won and knew it. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, you came on this show to attack me, to question my loyalty, to undermine the intelligence community's integrity. Instead, you've demonstrated exactly why Americans are losing faith in politicians. You don't represent working people, you exploit their trust while living like a celebrity. You don't champion ethics, you violate rules and comply only when investigated. You don't serve your constituents, you use them as background for your political brand. You don't embody the revolutionary change you promise, you're just another politician gaming the system for personal benefit." Her voice carried the weight of absolute moral authority. "I've spent 21 years serving this country, not performing service for Instagram, not creating viral moments, actually serving in combat in Congress now as DNI. You've spent 6 years building a brand, performing activism, creating content. We are not the same. And the American people deserve to know the difference between authentic service and political theater." The studio was completely silent. Jake Tapper didn't even try to moderate. What could he say? This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a judgment. "I'm done with this discussion," Tulsi said calmly. "The Congresswoman can spend the rest of the show explaining her ethics violations to viewers. I have actual intelligence work to do." She gathered her folders with military precision and walked off the set. The last image America saw before the commercial break was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the social media superstar with millions of followers sitting alone at the desk, exposed, devastated, her credibility in ruins. The combat veteran had delivered absolute victory. For 15 full seconds after Tulsi left the set, nobody moved. Jake Tapper sat frozen, his years of journalistic experience utterly inadequate for processing what had just happened. AOC remained in her chair, staring at the empty seat beside her, her face a mixture of shock, humiliation, and barely contained tears. The control room was in chaos. Producers yelling, phones ringing, social media feeds exploding. In studios across the country, political commentators watched with their mouths open. This wasn't normal political combat. This was something unprecedented, a systematic, evidence-based destruction of a politician's credibility by someone with the authority and access to back up every single accusation. Finally, Jake found his voice. "Congresswoman, would you like to respond to Director Gabbard's allegations?" It was a lifeline, a chance to recover some dignity, but AOC was too devastated to grab it. She started, her voice cracking. She used her position to attack. The words wouldn't come. For the first time in her political career, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez couldn't perform her way out of a situation. Because this wasn't about performance. This was about facts. And facts don't care about your Instagram following. After a commercial break, AOC back on camera for a solo segment, a chance to respond without Tulsi present. It was a disaster. What you just witnessed was a coordinated attack on a progressive congresswoman using the power of intelligence agencies. AOC began trying to find her footing, but her voice lacked conviction. Her body language screamed defeat. Director Gabbard used her position to weaponize government resources against someone who disagrees with the Trump administration's policies. Even as she said it, AOC seemed to realize how weak it sounded, because Tulsi hadn't used classified information. She'd used public ethics reports, official House documents, federal complaints information any American could access. Jake pressed gently, "But Congresswoman, the House Ethics Committee did find that you violated gift rules. That's not Tulsi Gabbard's accusation, that's an official finding from a bipartisan committee. The committee found no intentional wrongdoing." AOC insisted, her voice rising. "I made good faith efforts to comply with rules. This is being blown out of proportion." What about the taxpayer-funded payments for dance training? Americans for Public Trust filed a formal complaint about those expenditures. Those were campaign expenses that were miscategorized. It's been corrected. So you did use taxpayer money for campaign activities. AOC realized the trap too late. No, it was an accounting error that every answer made it worse. Without her social media platform, without time to craft perfect responses, without her communications team running interference, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was just a politician who had been caught violating ethics rules, trying desperately to spin her way out. It wasn't working. The American people were watching a performance fall apart in real time. While AOC struggled on camera, social media was experiencing a nuclear event. Within minutes of Tulsi walking off set, the clips were everywhere. Tulsi destroyed, AOC was trending at 14 million mentions. Hashtag AOC exposed hit 11 million. Hashtag combat vet v social media star reached 9 million. But it wasn't just the quantity, it was the nature of the reaction. Progressive accounts tried to defend AOC, but even her supporters were struggling. How do you defend someone who wore a tax-the-rich dress while accepting $35,000 in unpaid gifts? Conservative accounts were sharing the clips endlessly, but more importantly, moderates and independents were piling on. I voted for AOC in 2020, but this is indefensible, became a common refrain. I didn't like Tulsi Gabbard before, but she's right about everything she said. Trended for hours. The contrast was too stark to ignore Tulsi combat veteran, 21 years military service, combat medical badge, 4 terms in Congress, now DNI. AOC former bartender, 6 years in Congress, no major legislation passed, celebrity political brand ethics violations. When you laid out the resumes side by side, it wasn't even close. Former military members flooded social media with testimonies about what real service looks like. Intelligence community professionals praised Tulsi's handling of the confrontation. Even some Democrats admitted AOC had been exposed as a hypocrite. The viral moments weren't about politics, they were about character. One clip in particular went mega viral, Tulsi saying, "You don't serve your constituents, Congresswoman. You use them as props in your political performance." Over 50 million views in the first hour. Because everyone across the political spectrum recognized the truth in that statement. AOC had built a brand, not a record of service. And in a direct confrontation with someone who'd actually served the difference was devastating. Mainstream media outlets faced an impossible situation. They'd built up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as a progressive star for 6 years. They'd given her endless platforms, favorable coverage, sympathetic profiles. Now that investment had been destroyed in less than an hour on live television. CNN, MSNBC, and other progressive outlets tried to frame it as Trump's DNI attacks Congresswoman. But the framing wouldn't stick, because the average viewer had seen the evidence. They'd heard the House Ethics Committee findings. They'd watched AOC's failed defenses. Fox News and conservative media ran the clips endlessly, but they didn't need to add much commentary. The destruction was self-evident. The most damaging coverage came from neutral outlets, places like the Hill Axios Politico, which reported straight facts. House Ethics Committee found AOC violated gift rules. Representative ordered to pay $2,983 in additional expenses. Taxpayer-funded payments to non-existent entities under investigation. DSA withdraws endorsement from Ocasio-Cortez. When even neutral outlets couldn't find angles to defend her, AOC's political future looked grim. The warrior had won. The performance was over. The political consequences came swiftly and brutally. Within 48 hours of the CNN broadcast, 3 major things happened. First, the House Ethics Committee announced it was reopening its investigation into AOC's taxpayer-funded office expenses, specifically the dance training payments. The publicity from Tulsi's exposure had forced their hand. They couldn't ignore the questionable payments anymore. Second, Americans for Public Trust filed a formal criminal referral with the Department of Justice, alleging potential fraud and misuse of taxpayer funds. With video of AOC's failed defenses now public, the complaint gained serious traction. Third, a coalition of watchdog groups demanded a complete audit of AOC's campaign finances, office expenses, and gift disclosures since taking office in 2019. They cited patterns of ethical violations and suspicious financial behavior. AOC's office released a statement claiming coordinated right-wing attacks. But the defense fell flat. when even progressive outlets noted that the House Ethics Committee was bipartisan and the original Met Gala finding came from a committee with Democratic members. More damaging politically, three progressive primary challengers immediately announced campaigns against AOC for her 2026 re-election. They explicitly cited her lack of accountability and betrayal of working-class values. The Democratic Socialists of America, which had already withdrawn their endorsement, issued a statement saying they cannot support candidates who violate ethics rules while claiming to fight corruption. Even AOC's progressive allies in Congress kept their distance. No one wanted to be associated with her defense when the evidence was this damaging and this public. Representative Jamal Bowman, one of her closest squad allies, notably refused to comment when asked. Representative Rashida Tlaib gave a carefully worded statement about everyone being accountable to ethics rules. The silence from her usual defenders spoke volumes. AOC was politically radioactive. 6 months after the CNN confrontation, the landscape had fundamentally shifted. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was still in Congress, but her power had evaporated. Her committee assignments were reduced. Her media appearances plummeted. Her influence in progressive caucuses collapsed. She'd gone from the most prominent voice in left-wing politics to a cautionary tale about celebrity politicians. The ethics investigations continued with expanding scope. Federal investigators were examining whether there were other undisclosed gifts beyond the Met Gala incident. Campaign finance experts were analyzing whether her lifestyle expenses matched her disclosed income. The IRS reportedly opened a review of her tax filings. Most devastatingly, AOC's own constituents turned on her. Town halls in NYC became hostile environments where residents demanded to know why she'd spent more time building a national brand than serving local needs. Her approval rating in her district dropped 23 points, catastrophic for an incumbent. Primary challengers were polling competitively against her. For the first time since 2018, AOC's re-election wasn't guaranteed. But the most significant impact wasn't on AOC personally, it was cultural. The Tulsi-AOC confrontation became a watershed moment in American politics. It represented the collision between two types of political figures. One, the authentic servant, military service, real sacrifice, substantive work, genuine expertise. Two, the celebrity performer, social media following, political theater, brand management, performative activism. When forced into direct confrontation, the difference was stark. Young progressives who'd idolized AOC began asking harder questions. What has she actually accomplished? What legislation has she passed? How has she helped her district? The answers were disappointing. AOC had mastered the art of looking like a revolutionary while achieving very little actual change. She'd built a massive platform without using it to deliver substantive results. Voters started demanding more than viral moments. They wanted actual service, actual results, actual accountability. And politicians who'd modeled themselves after AOC's social media approach suddenly found that approach less effective. The era of celebrity politicians dominating through performance rather than substance was ending. And it ended because a combat veteran with nothing to hide and everything to prove decided to hold one accountable on national television. For Tulsi Gabbard, the aftermath brought vindication. The attacks that had plagued her nomination, accusations of being a Russian asset, questions about her loyalty, concerns about her intelligence experience, all evaporated in the face of her systematic evidence-based destruction of AOC. She'd demonstrated exactly what America needed from its intelligence leadership. Someone with unquestionable integrity. someone who couldn't be intimidated, someone who dealt in facts rather than spin. Her approval rating as DNI jumped 18 points across all demographics. Even Democrats, who'd opposed her nomination, admitted she'd handled the confrontation with remarkable professionalism and restraint. The intelligence community rallied around her. Career professionals appreciated having a leader who defended them against baseless political attacks while maintaining strict adherence to rules and protocols. More importantly, Tulsi's handling of AOC established a new standard for political accountability. She'd shown that politicians who build careers on attacking others should be prepared to have their own records examined with equal scrutiny. That celebrity status doesn't exempt anyone from ethical responsibilities. That performance is no substitute for substance. 6 months later, when testifying before Congress about intelligence priorities, Tulsi was asked about the AOC confrontation by a Democratic representative trying to paint her as partisan. Her response was perfect. Representative, I used publicly available ethics reports and federal documents to respond to personal attacks against my integrity and that of the intelligence community. I will always defend the women and men who serve this country when politicians attack them unfairly. If that makes me partisan, so be it. The exchange went viral, but this time as an example of leadership rather than combat. Tulsi Gabbard had proven that authentic service will always defeat political performance. That evidence matters more than followers. That character can't be faked when challenged by someone who actually has it. The confrontation between Tulsi Gabbard and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wasn't just about one ethics scandal or one politician's hypocrisy. It was about what Americans value in their leaders. Do we reward performance or substance celebrity, or service social media following, or actual accomplishment, political theater, or genuine sacrifice? The answer came through clearly when directly compared when forced into actual accountability. Americans chose the combat veteran over the Instagram politician. They chose the woman who'd earned her authority through decades of service over the one who'd built it through viral moments. They chose documented evidence over emotional appeals. They chose military bearing over political performance. 1 year after the confrontation, polling showed that 67% of Americans wanted more leaders like Tulsi Gabbard, military veterans with service records. 71% believed social media politicians are less trustworthy than those with government experience. 58% said the Tulsi-AOC confrontation restored some faith in political accountability. The cultural shift was undeniable. Performance politics was losing ground to authentic service, and it happened because one warrior decided to fight back when attacked, with evidence, with precision, with absolute moral authority. And she won. If you made it this far, you've witnessed something extraordinary. You just watched a decorated combat veteran systematically dismantle a celebrity politician using nothing but facts, evidence, and moral authority. Smash that like button if you think more politicians need to be held accountable like this. Subscribe to this channel because we're exposing the truth about political theater versus authentic service. Share this story everywhere before the mainstream media tries to memory hole what really happened. Comment below. Do you think AOC should resign from Congress? Should all politicians' ethics records be examined this thoroughly? Who else needs to be investigated with this level of scrutiny? Did Tulsi go too far, or was this exactly what needed to happen? Turn on notifications because when real patriots stand up to fraudulent politicians, this is what accountability looks like. This story proves several critical things. One social media following means nothing when your record is examined by someone with actual authority and access to evidence. Two celebrity politicians who build brands instead of serving constituents will eventually be exposed. Three combat veterans who've actually sacrificed for their country have moral authority that no amount of Instagram posts can match. 4. The American people are hungry for authentic accountability, not political theater. 5. When warriors face frauds in direct confrontation, there's never any doubt about who wins. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thought her social media army would protect her. She thought her progressive credentials would shield her from scrutiny. She thought she could attack the Director of National Intelligence with zero consequences. She was catastrophically wrong. Tulsi Gabbard proved that when you attack someone with actual integrity, actual evidence, and actual authority, you get destroyed. This is what happens when performance meets substance. This is what happens when theater meets reality. This is what happens when America remembers what real leadership looks like. God bless our combat veterans. God bless intelligence professionals who serve with integrity. God bless everyone who still believes authentic service matters more than viral moments. The era of celebrity politicians is ending, and it ended because one warrior decided to fight back. With facts, with evidence, with absolute moral authority. And America watched her win.